Hello and welcome to this iLead 2020 conference. 2020, what a year it has been, right? A year that all of us would probably want to forget after a couple of years, right? And whoever knew that we will be meeting in this fashion and not, in person, face to face, right? The pandemic came and the pandemic changed the world around us, right? And it changed the world in such a manner that it sort of crashed probably the next 5 to 10 years change into the last 5 months. And that's really what the pandemic did. But praise be to the Lord that we are able to at least, communicate and get together in this manner using technology so that we could still know what his guidance for us from a point of view of leadership and more importantly of living. And so that is the theme of today. As you probably know, it is about healthy habits for a wealthy life. And of course, there are two ways of looking at it, from the worldly point of view or from the Christian point of view. And where I will be looking at. So I will be looking at healthy habits for a wealthy life from the Christian way. So that's really what I would be looking at. And so even though this is in the context of leadership, remember, leadership is influence, right? It is not about titles or positions or designations or hierarchy and stuff like that. It is about influence. The moment you have a chance to influence somebody, you are a leader, and that is the definition of leadership that we go with, and that's why this is presented in the context of leadership, but it is applicable for our day-to-day life because it is through the day-to-day life that each one of us influence others, right? So that's really the topic that we want to look at. And when we look at this topic, I'm going to basically highlight just 4, right? I don't want to throw too many things at you. I just want to highlight 4 habits that you could develop, you could inculcate, and you could establish so that your life becomes wealthy the Christian way. So let's jump right into it. And look at habit number 1. Habit number 1, and remember, all these habits have come out of my research into leadership, specifically in the current context of the pandemic and the changes that the world is going through. The research that I have done from a corporate and secular point of view. So these habits are certainly applicable, and this is what I teach in the corporate world. But of course, for us, there is the strength and the wisdom drawn from the Bible, from the Word of God. And that is really what I would like to draw upon, right? So I will be presenting to you these habits that one can develop and quickly take you through the biblical parallels or the biblical imperatives of what it is meant to be. So once again, let us jump into the habit number 1. Habit number 1 is about understanding the points of power, your points of power, and using them appropriately. I repeat, habit number 1 is about understanding your points of power and using them appropriately. Now, everybody has got some power or the other, right? And that's been proven, through research and through studies and stuff like that. All of us have got powers, and if you really look at it, even though you are merely a housewife, or even though you are just a student, even though you are just an individual contributor in an organization, do not ever believe that you do not have some points of power. All of us have got certain points of power, right? And research shows that there are several of them, but I will just basically highlight just 5 of them. And you can add on to it. These 5 that I highlight are not exhaustive by any means, right? So the first type of power is the power that we may have to coerce people, to force people to do things. And this is what I call as the coercive power. And if you want a biblical example, you can always take King Ahaz or Queen Jezebel, right? People who used power to force others to do things so that they could be glorified and their personal motives could be met and stuff like that. So that is the coercive power. Now, I'm of course intentionally going to highlight the misuse of these powers, right? All these powers can either be used positively or negatively. All these powers can be used for the benefit of others or for your own personal benefit. Like, for example, the coercive power could be used when in an emergency situation for the benefit of others, right? But the type that Ahaz or Jezebel use is the misuse of that coercive power that they had, right? The second power that we could look at quickly is what I call as the legitimate power. The power that you gain because of the position that you have, because of the legal authority that is invested in you. What you typically see in a traffic policeman, right? He or she has a power vested in him or her because of the position that she has or he has, right? And that is the legitimate power. And in the Bible, you would see that this is the power that the kings and the high priest and others wielded. And again, you will see significant misuses of that power by king after king after king, including the very first king, Saul himself, and then David, and then Solomon. Even those great kings whom we love, even they have misused that legitimate power, and you will see that in long list of kings or high priests that we can look at. The third type of power that you would have is what we call as the reward power. The power that you can use to reward others, right? This is sort of the antidote to the coercive power. But this is where you can give them a reward if they do something. And in organization, managers and supervisors use this power quite well, and sometimes not so quite well, where they misuse that power to gain favoritism and stuff like that, right? One of the beautiful examples in the Bible is of King Belshazzar, right? Nebuchadnezzar's son, who takes over this. And in Daniel chapter 5, there is this beautiful instance where Belshazzar's offers Daniel a lot of reward if only he would interpret the writing on the wall. And then I love Daniel's response. Of course, he says, "You can keep your rewards to yourself and give it to somebody else. I don't want those rewards," right? So rulers and others have traditionally used the reward power to get what they want, right? So and that's again the misuse of that reward power. The fourth type of power that we can quickly look at is what we call the expert power. And then many of you who work in knowledge industries, many of you who are engineers, many of you who are who have certain knowledge about some things, can easily identify with this particular power, the expert power, the power that you hold because of the expertise that you have, right? Again, in the Bible, you look at the Pharisees, for example. They were experts in the law, the Torah, and that is really what made them powerful, right? So you see instances where it can be misused, right? And the last type of power that we can look at is what I call as the referent power. This is typically what the celebrities have. Shah Rukh Khan, Amitabh Bachchan, Sachin Tendulkar, or Mahi and others. Because what they do is generally want to be replicated by a lot of others, right? So that's the referent power. And again, in the Bible, you can see Solomon, right? Everyone looked up to him. Guy with wisdom, handsome, peaceful, this thing, and stuff like that. And then again, we see that he sets bad examples for his people and for the nation and stuff like that, right? So, and again, you can add to this list of powers, but there are certain powers that are given to you, and it is our responsibility to identify what is the power that has been given to us and to use it appropriately. And as I said, any power that is given to you can be used appropriately for the benefit of others or for misused for personal benefit. And that's where we have to go by Jesus' example. Jesus' example that he sets in John 13:3. John 13:3 says that Jesus knew that he had come from the Father. Jesus knew that he was going to the Father, and Jesus knew that the Father had put everything under his authority. And knowing that he had all that power, he gets up from his place, takes out his outer garments, wraps himself with a towel, picks up a basin, and washes the feet of his disciples, including the disciple whom he knew was going to betray him. Right? So that's the sort of reversal that we see. But in the other examples that I highlighted, we see a lot of misuse of that power. And if you really look at the Bible, right, Bible has actually showed us about this misuse of power through what I call as the Lord's leadership sketch, God's leadership sketch. So let us look at God's leadership sketch a little bit, right? If you really look at the very first definition of leadership, that can be found in Genesis 1:28. Genesis 1:28 is where the Lord tells Adam, that you look, everything that we have created is for you, and so you go over, have dominion over every living thing, and subdue everything that I have created, right? And so the operative word there is subdue and rule over. I want you to pause there for a moment and think about the current context. Do you want your leaders to really subdue and rule over you? Is that the definition of leadership that one can say is appropriate in today's context? I think the answer obviously would be no. I mean, no one wants your leader to rule over you or subdue you, right? And no one really wants to do that, right? And you don't want to work under a boss who really literally follows that principle of ruling over and subduing you. So did God make a mistake in giving this command? Right? I'm sure none of you sitting there would believe that God made a mistake, right? And the question is rhetorical. But to understand the implication of this, you got to look at the timeline of when this happened. And you will soon realize that this command of rule over and subdue was given before the fall. Because before the fall, the whole understanding of rule over and subdue would have been entirely different from what we know today in the fallen world, right? And so that is what happened, right? God gave this command of leadership, rule over and subdue, and then came the fall. And obviously after the fall, God knew that these people needed some boundaries to be set, some guidelines to be set, and then came the laws. And along with the laws also came the laws for leadership. And that is where God in Deuteronomy 17:14-20 tells the people that, look, when you set a leader above you, when you set a king above you, these are certain things that you must ensure that he or she he does not do or he does do, right? And that Deuteronomy 17:14-20 is more about what the king should not do as against what the king should do, right? And so basically, from explaining that rule over and subdue, because of the fall, God gives the laws as to what the leaders should not do. And then comes this beautiful, beautiful warning in 1 Samuel chapter 8, where the people of Israel come and tell Samuel that, like, Samuel, you're getting old, your children are not of any use, and so we want a king. And one other reason why we want a king is because when we go and have a coffee with the other people around, they all say that they have a king and we don't have a king. We feel embarrassed that we don't have a king. So Samuel gets angry and he asks the Lord, but the Lord tells Samuel, if a king is what they need, go ahead and give them a king, but warn them what the king will do to them. And Samuel 8:11-18 reads like what the current leadership does, right? Samuel tells the people, look guys, you want a king? Behold, this is what the king is going to do. The king is going to take away everything that you have. The king is going to take away your sons and daughters and make them servants and slaves and soldiers. The king is going to take away your land and build their palaces. The king is going to take away your livestock and till his land. The king is going to take away your silver. The king is going to take away everything that you have. That is what the king will do. But we are hard-headed people, so we don't listen. So like Israelites, they say that, okay, all right, I understand that, but I still need a king. And so the king comes, and then you see what happens because of that, right? So what we see here is very simple. We see God giving this command of what to do in Genesis 1:28, and then comes the fall, and then because of the fall, God gives what not to do description in Deuteronomy 17:14-20, followed by what will be the misuse that will happen when you have kings and leaders who take power and use it for their selfish motives. You look at any of the kings, right? Even like, as I said, the very first King Saul, he disobeyed. King David, you misuse power to get another wife, as if he didn't have enough wives already. King Solomon misused power to please his wives and concubines. And then we come across with the classic example of Rehoboam, right, where he had a choice. He had a choice. Actually, in 1 Kings 12, verse 7, the people tell Rehoboam, like, if you serve these people today, they will be your servants forever. But then he doesn't do that. He goes ahead and chooses in 12:11, in 1 Kings 12:11, he chooses to use his power and say that, look, I don't want to serve you. I want to rule over you. I want to subdue you. I want to tax you. I want to scourge you. I want to punish you. I'm going to use my power to rule over and subdue you. That is exactly what he did. Right? And we will see that in the long line of kings that comes, right? So that is really where God has warned us about the use of power, right? So that is habit number 1 for you. Understand the points of power that you have and know that it comes from God, and never misuse it, right? As we have seen in these examples. And I have intentionally highlighted the examples of misuse of power, but do not fall into that trap. That is habit number 1. Understand your points of power and use them, not for your personal benefits, but for the benefit of others. Let's move to habit number 2. Habit number 2 is again, simple. It's about others. Make your life, make everything that you do about others, right? When people ask me about servant leadership, to define servant leadership, I tell them that a servant leader is somebody who invests in the life of another person to the extent that the other person becomes better, bigger, wiser, richer, healthier, wealthier, more famous than himself or herself. Let me repeat it for you. A servant leader is somebody who invests in the life of another person to the extent that the other person becomes better, bigger, wiser, richer, healthier, wealthier, more famous than the leader himself or herself. That is true servant leadership. And what do we see in the Bible about others, right? Let us take two examples, right? Let us take the example of Saul and David first. We all know, right? Saul loved David, right? And that is what is said in 1 Samuel chapter 16. Saul loved David. And then sometime along the way, that love becomes hatred. And then Saul wants to kill David. And all of us know when that turning point comes. The turning point is when people start praising David more than Saul, right? When people start praising David more than Saul. Now, Saul could just not tolerate the fact that someone, a village boy whom he took from the village, who he brought to the palace, who he gave a chance to, sit at his table, who he gave, the chance to be close to him and stuff like that. Somebody who he provided with all these things. How could someone else be better than me? Right? And you will see this actually. Saul keeps talking about it even later, right? What is it that David did that I could not do? Why do you love him so much that you don't love me, and stuff like that? So you can see this dialogue going on in Saul's head. So Saul just could not tolerate David becoming better, bigger, wiser, richer, healthier, wealthier, more famous than himself, right? Let's take another example in the New Testament of another Saul who becomes Paul one fine morning, and then after a few months he wants to go and see the apostles. He wants to meet the apostles in Jerusalem. And the Bible explicitly says that when they heard that Paul is coming, they were afraid. They were afraid. I think about them and I think that, look, oh yeah, I will be afraid too. Because this is a guy who used to catch Christians and put them in prison till the previous evening, and then one fine morning he gets up and says, look, I'm a Christian from now onwards and I want to come and meet you. Who wouldn't be afraid? But you know what? There's one person who stood guarantee for him. And you know the name of that person? That person is Barnabas. Barnabas stands guarantee for him. Barnabas goes and introduces him to the apostles, and he doesn't stop there. Barnabas accompanies Paul for all his initial missionary journeys, whether it is to Antioch or Tarsus or Jerusalem or Cyprus or Paphos or wherever, right? So multiple places where Paul went, Barnabas actually accompanies him, mentors him, and be with him. And we all know who becomes more famous, who becomes better known, whose letters are in the Bible, right? And so Barnabas is actually happy in a way to fade away into obscurity, and we don't hear anywhere where Barnabas gets bitter about the whole aspect, right? Now, they've had their argument, they fall apart later, but that's nothing to do with who is more famous or who is getting more attention and stuff like that, right? Barnabas does not get bitter that Paul is becoming better and Paul is becoming more famous and things like that. So you see these two examples, right? And that's really what is habit number 2 about. It is about others. Whatever we do, make it about others. And remember, the definition of a servant leader is someone who invests in the life of another person to the extent that the other person becomes better, bigger, wiser, richer, healthier, wealthier, more famous than himself or herself. So that's habit number 2 for you. Habit number 3. Let's move on quickly to habit number 3. Habit number 3 is this: live values. Live some values. Have a set of values and live by it. And Chris Wright, many of you know him, the pioneer in Lausanne movement and Langham, organization called Langham. He actually coined this term called HIS, H-I-S. He says we have to be HIS, and he says HIS stands for humility, integrity, and simplicity. And we all know the Bible talks a lot about humility and a lot about simplicity and things like that. But let me highlight only that one value of integrity, okay? The one value of integrity. If you ever had, if you talk to a parent who has got a school-going child, as to what will their reaction be when they get a call from the principal's office saying that you need to come and meet me, they will all say that, look, we feel worried, something wrong, so we will feel anxious. So here is a couple who gets such a call from the principal's office to come and meet them, and meet her, and the parents go sit in front of the principal with trembling and fear. And the principal tells them that, guys, we have a problem. Your son, who is in 2nd standard, he steals pencils and erasers and stuff like that from his classmates. We have to do something about it. The parents are embarrassed. They don't know where to hide their face. The father is shattered, and the father tells the principal, Madam, I am very, very annoyed. I'm very, very embarrassed. I'm very shattered as what my son is doing. And I don't know why he should do it, because everything that he needs and much more than what he needs, I can bring it from my office and give it to him. Right? You get the point, right? You get the point of where this little boy gets his value lessons from, right? We may laugh at this story, but the fact is that we live in a culture that is adjustable, right? We say that very often, thoda adjust karo, and in any other language that you want to, right? We live in an adjustable. We live in a culture which believes that integrity is not so black and white. Integrity could be, 50 shades of gray. Integrity, so sometimes we differentiate between a small breach of integrity and a big breach of integrity. Now the problem with this is this: it is not in line with God's standard of integrity. What is God's standard of integrity? And that is where I want you to go to Job 27:3-6. Job, all of us know Job. Job is a happy ending book. But before that happy ending comes, when Job was struggling, when Job was, going through all those difficulties, his friends come and sit with him and talk to him, chapter over chapter over chapter. But across all these chapters, there's one clear message that they want to send to Job, and that is this, very simple. God is a good God. If you are suffering, it cannot be because God is doing it. It is only because you have messed up. You have done something wrong. And so all that you have to do is to go and repent and confess your sins, and God will make things all right. Right? God is a good God. God can't be evil, so God can't do bad things. So go, it must be your mistake. And that's really what the friends tell them over several chapters. And I love Job's answer to this. Job's answer says like this, and especially the Message Bible translation says like this. The Message Bible translation says that, look, as long as God breathes life into my nostrils, I will not utter a lie. I will hold on to my integrity even if it costs my life. I will hold on to my integrity even if it costs my life. What a beautiful, beautiful standard of integrity, right? No wonder that Job was the only human being on whom God was willing to place a bet, right? I wondered, why did God choose Job? And now I know that this is the reason. His standard of integrity is very, very different from yours and mine. And that is the level of integrity that God expects from his people, the leaders, us, right? And the problem with the other thing is, the problem with that 50 shades of gray, is that you don't know when you go from white to light gray to, gray to slightly dark gray to dark gray to black. You don't know. You don't know the transition. And that is really what happened for big organizations like Enron in the US or Satyam in India and stuff like that, right? Where the fraud starts with small amounts, and then before we know, whole enterprises are lost. So that is, the third habit that you got to develop. Live certain values, and specifically the value of humility, integrity, and simplicity. Humility, integrity, and simplicity. Be his, as Chris Wright would put it. Right? Let's move on to habit number 4. Habit number 4 is, in my studies, again, my studies as it shows in the corporate world, in the secular world, is this, that we need to stop chasing success and start pursuing significance. I repeat, we need to stop chasing success and start pursuing significance. Now, what do I mean by this? Now, if you look around, you will find people leading different types of lives. You will find one category of people who actually lead what I call as a life of survival. They just get up in the morning, they just go through the motions of the day just because the day exists, with no enthusiasm, no specific goals, and then get into the next day. These are people whom I call as the typically eat, sleep, repeat type of people, right? That's their mantra, that's their motto, right? They don't have any specific objectives, they don't have any specific enthusiasm or nothing to pursue during their day. So this is one kind of people. There's a second category of people, especially among Christians, who believe that that they are nothing, they are a worm, they are useless and stuff like that. They value themselves so much, they devalue themselves so less that that sometimes I wonder whether they are insulting God by doing that, because they were made in God's image. These are the people who forget that that you are made in God's image, and God does not make junk. God does not make mistake, right? So if God made you, there is some value in you, and He values you. He values you, right? So these are people who basically say that, look, I'm nothing, I'm useless, I'm a worm. You can climb over me, you can use me as a footmat, or whatever it is that you want to do. Right? So these are people whom I call as people who lead a life of self-abasement. Then, of course, there is this the third category, what is called as the people, especially what the corporates love, where the people who get up every morning and say that, look, I want to achieve something today. I want to go and change my gadget. I want to get another degree. I want to buy a new property. I want to acquire a new wardrobe. Whatever it is, that they want to do things that is better than what it was yesterday. And they want to achieve goals. They want to surpass their goals that they set for yesterday. They want to break the record that they did for yesterday, right? All that stuff. So these are people who chase success. Now, especially in the corporate world, people will say that there's nothing wrong with going after success. You've got to be successful. That's what the world tells us. That's what, school graduation addresses will tell you that, okay, go be successful, right? The problem with success is this. The problem with success is you end up adding value to yourself, but you do not add value to others. So what my research shows in the corporate world is this: employees are not happy with leaders who just pursue success, who just pursue profit, who just pursue goals. They say, look, what have you done to others with it? What have you done to others with it, right? So that becomes the rallying point, and that is where the life, what I call it, the life of significance comes. Now, a person who leads a life of significance is a person who adds value to himself or herself. They do acquire knowledge, they do acquire wisdom, they do acquire material wealth, they do acquire health, right? They do acquire other things for themselves, but the difference is they acquire wisdom so that they can help the foolish. They acquire knowledge so that they can teach the unlearned. They acquire wealth so that they can help the poor. They acquire health so that they can serve the sick and things like that. So you add value to yourself with the explicit purpose of adding value to others, and that is life of significance, right? So that is the habit number 4, right? Do not chase success alone, add significance to success, right? Use your success to achieve, do things for others, to help things for others, make it about others, and then basically add value to others with whatever God has given you or going to give you. Right? So that is really the 4th habit. And again, Bible, there are multiple places in the Bible which talks about asking us to lead a life of significance, whether it is Matthew 5:13-14, where we talk about you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the earth, right, and things like that. And then John 15:8, which talks about that you bear much fruit, showing yourself to be my disciples. And then my favorite one, John 15:6, where he says, you did not choose me, I chose you so that you can go and bear fruit. And then another favorite of mine is 1 Peter 2:12, where it says, look, go live among the pagans, such good lives that they will see the good lives that you live. And even though they blame you, they will ultimately give glory to God when they see the good works that you do, right? And then there are several of such instances where the Bible tells us to pursue significance and not just success for ourselves. So that's the 4 habits, right? First habit, understand your points of power and use it for the benefit of others. Second, whatever you do, it's about others. Do not make it about yourselves. Do not use power and everything that you have just for yourself. Invest in others. Habit number 3 is about living values, is about being His, right? It's about living values and being His. And the habit number 4 is about stop chasing success and pursue significance instead. Now let me just pause here and tell you what is happening in the world out there, especially because of the pandemic, right? People are asking, look, what type of leaders do we need? And they are actually fed up with leaders who are selfish in nature. They are fed up with leaders who just pursue, profit. They are fed up with leaders who are greedy. They are fed up with power being concentrated on a few people. So the world is asking today, business world as well as the world in general is asking today, is there a leadership philosophy which actually inculcates all these good asks, right? Is there a way that we can influence others, not by using the power that we have, but by serving others? Is there a way to influence others by being other-centered, not being self-centered? Is there a way we can live our values, especially the value of humility, integrity, and simplicity, being His? And can we influence others by being significant rather than by chasing success and things like that? And you know what? The good news is the world has discovered that there is an answer, and that answer is in servant leadership, right? And that is where the concept of servant leadership is finding a significant amount of acceptance in the corporate world, in the secular world. And as Victor Hugo says, there is nothing as powerful as an idea whose time has come. And so the world is beginning to believe that, look, the time for servant leadership has come, even in profit-making organizations, even in corporations, even in secular organizations and things like that. I mean, the summary is that the world has found servant leadership to be the answer for all those desires that people are developing about leadership because of the pandemic and because of all the changes that are happening around. The question is, of course, is there a Christian answer? And the answer is, again, that the Christian answer has always been there, right? For almost 2,000 years, it has been there. Let's go back to the God's leadership sketch as we saw a little earlier, right? We know that the first definition is in Genesis 1:28, where it talks about ruling over and subduing, and then comes the fall. And then because of the fall, God tells that there is a prediction that people are going to misuse the power in Deuteronomy 17:14-20, and then comes the warning of misuse in 1 Samuel 8:18. 11-18. And if you really look at the history of humankind, if you really look at the Bible, we will see that this misuse of power has been repeated over and over and over and over again till Jesus comes and reverses the whole thing. Jesus tells in Matthew 20:25-28, he says, look, the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them and exercise authority over them, but not so with you. Not so with you. Whoever wants to be great must be a servant, and etc., etc. Because the Son of Man came to serve and not to be served, and give his life as a ransom for many. Not so with you. Jesus is actually reversing. Genesis 1:28 before the fall says, look, you go, rule over, subdue. Jesus in Matthew 20:25-28 says, hold on, you shall not do that. Not so with you, because of the fall that has happened, because you understand ruling over and lording over in a very different way. Not so with you. You shall not rule over, you shall not subdue others, but serve. And then he goes on and actually sets gives the new command in John 13:13-17, where he says, look, I am your master and your teacher, and you call me that, and I am so. And now your master and teacher, if I have washed your feet, you got to do likewise. I have set an example for you, and you must do accordingly, right? So you see this, this evolving leadership sketch, and gets completed in Jesus, right? From what to do in Genesis 1:28, which is before the fall, to what not to do in Deuteronomy 17:14-20, and then the misuse of power and and then comes Jesus' reversal and the not so with you command. And then comes that that clear instruction. Actually, I challenge you, go back to the Bible and read and look for which are the other places where Jesus says explicitly that I have done this to set an example for you. Nowhere. This is the only place where Jesus says that I have done this to set an example for you, because Jesus didn't want to leave this particular piece to the discretion of theologians or scholars or pastors or teachers or preachers to interpret. He said, look, I have done this to set an example for you, right? And if I have done so, you should do accordingly. And then John 13:17 very clearly says that now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do accordingly. And I have searched about 24 different translations of the Bible to see if John 13:17 says something different or is translated something different. No. Everywhere the focus is on acting and doing what Jesus did. Pick up the basin, wrap the towel around you, and wash the feet of the servants, wash the feet of your apostles, even those who will betray you. Now, of course, you have to see that washing of the feet in today's context, right? It is not that we have to walk around with a basin and towel in our office rooms, but we have to contextualize that. But the message is very simple: serve others, right? And that is really the command. Now, so this is what I want to close with, my dear friends, my dear brothers and sisters. For the world, servant leadership has emerged as a viable alternative to the existing leadership philosophies. It is just one of those alternatives. But for you and me, who believe in Jesus Christ, who call Jesus Christ our Lord and Master, there is no alternative. There is no alternative. Because Jesus says, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. You see, for you and me, there is no alternative but to follow that command. There is no alternative. We are Christians, we have been called. Jesus says, look, I have set an example for you, and you go do accordingly, and you will be blessed. So that's my message to you. 4 habits, and what's its implication for you that you can take up in your life, right? So I'll leave you with some reflection questions, and you can go through those reflection questions during the times that you have. They are on the screen. So I'll leave you with some reflection questions which are there on your screen. You can discuss that, debate over it, and arrive at some specific action plans that you can take to be a servant leader, to practice those 4 habits that we spoke about. And I'll be happy to help you in any way that I can, if you wish to know how it can be practiced, right? It's not an easy thing to do, because converting this into day-to-day actions could be difficult. And so there are support available, there are programs available and things like that. So if you would like to use any of them, do contact us, and we would be happy to help you. Come and join the servant leadership movement and lead a wealthy life the Christian way. Thank you.